June doesn't go very high in the sky in its arc. So you think of something rising, it doesn't just go up and down. In June, the full moon has the lowest trajectory of any of the months in the sky. It is so low on the horizon that it takes on an amber glow, much the way a setting sun first turns amber, yellowish amber, possibly turning red. So that amber moon in June is what came to be known as the honey moon. And so when you get married in June and go off to Hawaii, you go on your honeymoon. It's an actual literal moon on the calendar. Except we don't think of that, we think of honeymoons rather than the actual moon upon doing so. But here was the news story. I'll read it to you. Harvest Moon 2013. How to see the full moon on what? Do you need instructions? What? We overvalue things that happen in the sky. We think we're living in special times. Every eclipse, there's a news article that says, rare eclipse happening. Do you know total solar eclipses, the beautiful kind with the corona around the eclipsed sun? Total solar eclipses occur every 2.5 years somewhere in the world. Every 2.5. That's more frequent than presidential elections. But no one says, rare presidential election coming up, rare Olympics coming up. But they always say rare eclipse, and you think you're living in special time. Earth has been around for 4.5 billion years, and you think, oh, in my lifetime, I'm having a special eclipse. How about this one? You know, the supermoon, right? Oh, you heard of this? You know what the supermoon is? So the moon's orbit around the Earth is not a perfect circle. It's what we call an ellipse, a flattened circle. It's closer to Earth at some times of the month than others. And the phases of the moon can line up any which way relative to that. Occasionally you get a full moon when the moon is closest. And somebody decided to call that the supermoon. Somebody, and then the press picked up on it. And my phone rings every time this thing shows up. And I'm angry, all right? So let's take a look at supermoon and pizza. You ready? Okay. If a small moon is that would be the moon, the full moon when in its orbit it's farthest from the Earth, right? It'll be a little smaller in the sky. If a small moon is a 7-inch pizza, then an average moon would be a 7.5-inch pizza. And a large moon would be an 8-inch pizza. And a supermoon would be an 8.0001-inch pizza. There are articles on this. Supermoon rises, biggest full moon in 18 years. Don't want to miss that. Don't want to miss that. Okay? What they don't ask you is, now, if you're scientifically literate, you don't just say, oh my gosh, I can't miss this. You say, how much bigger is it than the next biggest full moon I've seen? Because we're in such a Guinness Book of World Record brain mode that when you get a record like this, you think it's big relative to anything else. So here is an actual relative size of the May full moon and the June supermoon. Okay? There you go. No one called the May moon a supermoon. No. Only the June was a supermoon. And everyone ran out to photograph it. Have you ever photographed a moon with any camera at all? Dude, just tonight, the moon will be up. Pull out your iPhone, your Samsung, whatever, your Samsung Galaxy, and take a picture of the moon and then show it to your friends. Let's say, was that a street lamp? Is that a firefly that was in the thing? What is that? Oh, that's a huge moon that I just saw. Do you know, if you take a drinking straw and look at the full moon through a drinking, it can easily fit inside the field of view of a drinking straw? Try it. But you've never done that before. And I'm not talking about the big gulp drinking straw. I'm talking about just regular old drinking straw. Just go look through it. So the moon is psychologically big to us, but in reality it's not. How about full moons and birth? You've heard more babies born during full moon. Turns out it's not really true for most places, but a couple of places it is true. A couple of places. Then you say, well, what's making that happen? But nowadays, we just yank babies out by a C-section. So I'm talking about natural births here, okay? So what's going on? People think maybe the full moon gravity is pulling the baby out, you know? Now, of course, that would mean, if that's the case, that would mean the woman has to be lined up wherever the full moon is in the sky. Because if the full moon were behind her, then the baby ain't coming out, right? How come this baby is, oh, the moon is, oh, turn around, man. You know, how's that? How's this gonna work? I'm gonna tell you something here, and you heard it here. Are you ready? The full moon has no higher gravity than any other phase of the moon. Not in total gravity, not in tidal gravity. At all. You heard it here, okay? You might be saying, well, how come the tide gets higher in the full moon? It's not the moon's fault. It's because the sun lines up with the moon when it's full moon and new moon. And when the sun lines up, the sun's tides add to the moon's tides. That's why you have higher tides during full moon. It's not the moon's fault. It's the sun's fault. I'm just saying. Oh, birth rates. So yeah, so what about those places where a couple of extra babies come out during full moon? So what's going on there? So either the full moon is yanking the baby out, but you could do, like I said, you could do that experiment and have women all turned in all the directions of the compass during full moon and see if the one that's directly in line with the moon gets broke. You could do this experiment. Or you could think a little deeper about this. Human gestation period is about 295 days. That's not the number the doctor tells you. The doctor gives you, this is for the benefit of the guys in the audience, the doctor tells you how many days they get the first date of missed period. Then they add a certain number of days to that and you get the birth date. So they're not actually counting the 2 weeks from the missed period to when you probably got pregnant. And so we add up all the days from conception to birth, it's about 295 days. Well, a full moon, the cycle between full moons is 29.5 days. Ooh. So that means the human gestation period is about equal to 10 cycles of the moon. Which means if you were born under a full moon, you were conceived under a full moon. And that, what happened under the full moon had nothing to do with gravity on that one. Just saying. Some other forces operating there. Now, this is, thankfully this one is fading. This is something I call the Mars virus. Okay, every August since 2003, an email goes around. Mars will be bigger and brighter than it has been in 60,000 years. It's like the supermoon article. So in 2003, Mars was closer to Earth than it had been in 60,000 years. They wanted everyone to go out and look at it. What's the question nobody asked? How much bigger is it? How much closer is it? Because Earth is in an elliptical orbit. Mars is in an elliptical orbit. And they don't always line up. But if you get it where we are farthest from the sun, and Mars is closest to the sun, and we're on the same side of the sun as each other, then we're close to Mars. Right? So they said closest in 60,000 years. No human has ever seen it and newspaper articles. It'll be so bright and big you'll need sunglasses at night. This story just ran away. So you ask, how much closer is Mars? So let me ask, we're in Michigan. Which direction is California from here? Just tell me. Point. Okay, I don't see total agreement among Mars. I'm going to go with the average and say this is west. Okay? The people here were pointing this way, and now I'm going to go with the average. Oh, you change your mind, sir? Yeah, you said it's this way, I don't care what the others say. When you're in the front row, you can't see the 1,000 people behind you pointing this way. Okay. So, that Mars article would be like me saying, can I do that? Let me jump again. I've never been this close to California before. It's not just gullible emailers. You get, how many journalism majors here? There's more than you than that. Raise your hand. I looked at the sheet. Thank you. Raise your hand. I'm not going to blame you. I'm going to blame your brethren, though. You ready? So here we go. The Daily News of New York. Mars closest to Earth in 60,000 years. It's a huge. So people don't know the right questions to ask. They're duped because there's something happening that they want to believe and don't even know how to question it. You should question stuff that you want to be true as well as stuff you don't want to be true. Question the cancer diagnosis. Question whether you need sunglasses tonight to look at Mars. How about life on Mars? I'm old enough, and I see some gray-haired folks out there. You're old. I have gray hair, but it's tinted because I was on TV. I have 2 gray streaks on the top of my head, and when I'm sitting to do TV interviews, like the light just beams off. It's like I have horns or something. And I got these emails. People said, "Are you going completely bald on top?" Because they think my scalp is white. Okay. No, it's gray hair, okay? And so they got tinted on top so that there's no distractions, right? We keep the gray in like the regular places. So, why am I even talking about that? What was I talking about? How did I get to my hair color and life on Mars? Thank you! I was paying attention. Some of you old enough here to remember in the 1970s, we had the Viking mission to Mars. We sent a lander and an orbiter, and the orbiter took pictures, and here's one of the pictures it took. Oh, can't see that? How about that? People said, life on Mars. Well, okay, so a couple of things. If there's life on Mars, and this is evidence of it, it would mean that whatever is the life on Mars has a face. And that face would be like a simian face, right? We have a simian face. We have flat faces. That's not a snout face. That's a flat face. So the life on Mars would look kind of human. This is a whole other planet. Now just think this through. On Earth, there is life with whom we share DNA in common that looks nothing like us. Do we look like jellyfish, lobsters, bacteria, yeast cells, oak trees? We have DNA in common with all those life forms. And we're going to go to Mars and find something that has 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth? Just think that through. And all the aliens they have on TV shows and movies. They got 2 legs, a torso, shoulder, arms. Okay, they have 4 fingers instead of 5. This is not creative, people. I know they have to pay an actor to wear the rubber suit. I got that. But if you're trying to invent a life form from another planet, at least make it look more different from any life on Earth than any 2 species on Earth look from each other. How's that for a sentence? You'll be thinking about that for the next hour, right? Well, there's only one thing that looks like a face no matter the sun angle. And what is that?
Face.
A face, thank you. So let's change the sun. Let's go back with higher resolution and a slightly different sun angle and see what. So we went back 15 years later, around there, and we took this picture. It's the same spot. You can kind of see where the eye sockets were, but the sun angle is different now. Now, people who wanted to believe that there was life on Mars and that was their big monument said, well, over the 15 years they saw that we were looking at them, and so they covered it over. That's what the Martians did. We were spying on them. Oh, and so where's the evidence? Oh, NASA's covering up the evidence. That's the conspiracy. So there's got to be somebody covering up the evidence. By the way, it's not that the government doesn't keep secrets. Of course it does. But really juicy secrets? You think those last? Look how much we knew about President Clinton's genitals, right? If there was a state secret, it would be what was going on in his pants. That got out. That was on the evening news. There's no secrets. You were thinking the government is way more competent than they actually are. And all this talk about phone tapping, and I tweeted this recently. I said, if you're tapping the phone to someone else, if you're tapping my phone, you've just admitted that my life is more interesting than yours. Okay? That's what's going on with phone taps. By the way, we took another picture at another time with even higher resolution. And so, no, it's not a face. And by the way, we have faces, so we find faces. We find those things familiar to us. If we were an octopus, maybe we would have found an octopus shadowy thing. When you're laying out on the beach and you look up at the clouds, how many, we've all seen Abe Lincoln and George Washington in the clouds, right? Or am I the only one? I see them all the time. Do I see paramecia? No, because I'm not a paramecium. You see things familiar to you. So let's keep looking at it. How about, oh, I got one. The Valentine crater, okay? There's all manner of formations on Mars. How about this smiley face crater? I got special permission to show this next photo to you. It was the very first image taken by the Curiosity rover that landed, was it last year, a year and a half ago? And NASA quickly covered it up. They didn't want you, but I haven't, because I have connections. I have the very first image from Mars right there. They didn't want you to know it. That was top secret.
I like Marvin better.
By the way, there's an entire branch of theology thinking about what would it mean if you found life on another planet. And there's a magazine, I don't know if it still exists, 21C is the name of the magazine. It has futuristic philosophies. What would this mean in the future if that happened? And one of them was, if we found life, what would it mean? And so they have one of their issues, like has Jesus on it. And they made him green, I think not out of disrespect, but they're trying to say if Martians are green, then who is their savior, right? And so it's actually a real and genuine theological, philosophical question. If there's life on other planets, especially if the life is more intelligent than we are, is the monotheistic God of the Judeo-Christian Bible the same God of that life form? Or is life on Earth special compared to the rest of the universe? So life on Mars is an issue. Life anywhere would be an issue. We're looking for life in the universe. I'm concerned about this fuzzy thinking because it can affect our economy. It can affect everything that we have held dear that America forged for itself in the 20th century. Our technological scientific leadership. So I give you some examples of bad math that I've seen out there. This is embarrassing, you know, it's embarrassing. Are you ready? Are you ready for one? Okay. Here's one. Half the schools in the district are below average. That was a newspaper headline. Don't you kind of expect about half to be below the average? Because it's kind of what an average is, right? You have to have some above and some below to get something in the middle that we call the average. That's how the math works. So this was a journalist who was mathematically illiterate. And you, ma'am, will not be one such journalist when you're finished. Will you? Okay, she's shaking her head. Got another headline.
Yeah.
I'll read it to you because it's in the back row. 80% of airplane crash survivors had studied the locations of the exit doors on takeoff. Now that's, you read that, you say, hey, I want to be, 80% is a good percent. I want to be in that percent. So I'm going to read where the exit doors. It was that study that changed the rubric of the flight attendant to say, look for the nearest exit, it might be behind you. It's that study that led to that change in what they describe for your safety reading. All right, so here's the problem. Suppose 100% of the dead people study the locations of the exit doors on takeoff. Then you would not know that because they're dead, right? So, I'm just saying, it's maybe learning where the exit doors are reduces your chances of survival. How is your brain wired for thought? That's what this comes down to. There's another one, you've heard this before. The state lottery is a tax on the poor. You've heard that one. Because poor people spend a disproportionate fraction of their disposable income on lottery tickets compared to wealthier people. But if you actually understood probability and statistics and chances of winning and losing, the state lottery is not a tax on the poor, it's a tax on the people that never did well in mathematics in school. That's what's going on there. But we're not admitting that to ourselves. This one I think is this, spoken by a member of Congress. I've changed my views 360 degrees on that issue. Just to remind you what 360 degrees is, right, here we go. 360 degrees. So I thought I'm of dual mind here, because either the member of Congress is mathematically illiterate and thinks that 360 degrees is an about face, or maybe the member of Congress knows math, didn't actually change their mind, want to leave you thinking that they did. That would be mathematically diabolical, right? So I don't know what's worse. Member of Congress. So other things that just, because it's bad out there. I live in New York City, and one day, and I do this sort of thing, I walked up and down Broadway, walked into every building, and photographed their elevator bank of numbers. Okay? That's a geeky thing to do, but I'm card carrying geek. So And what I found, this was common. By the way, most buildings are taller than, you know, a couple of dozen floors. So, but here's one. This is very common. It's a common sight. So, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. Where is the 13th floor? This is the United States of America. And walking among us are people afraid of the number 13. And we claim we're leaders in what? What are we leading? Now, 80% of the buildings had banks such as this. Then I said, well, maybe they're more enlightened places. So I come to Grand Rapids.